Welcome everyone as we take a look at Heroes of the Aegean, a brand new DLC coming out for Old World. We've already had Old World brought to bear, so if you want to check out the video for the full game, alongside a full breakdown of all the mechanics and options available to you, then I'll make sure to put a link in the description. Today we're just focusing in on the one DLC. Now the Heroes of the Aegean will be free for 2 weeks alongside the release of Old World. Following that, it will be a separate paid for DLC. So to those of you in the future, let's find out what this is and if it is still worth your time. Or more importantly, your money. And just a quick apology, as I had some audio troubles when I was recording this, so the sound is going to change a little bit between sections and may be a bit funky in parts, particularly with the fan noise coming in. But with that said, the Heroes of the Aegean is divided into 6 separate campaigns. Our prologue, the Battle of Marathon, setting the scene for the rest of the game. On Land and Sea, our specialist combat focus, alongside 4 more narrative-driven campaigns, looking at the rise of Macedon, Queen Olympias, Alexander the Great, Diadochi, dividing the empire, and yes, I cannot pronounce a single thing in this game. But mispronunciations aside, let's go through exactly what these are. The campaigns for the Heroes of the Aegean are primarily narrative focused, giving a fair amount of replayability to them, with the one exception of On Land and Sea affording possibly the best combat tutorialization in the entire game, and something I was really happy to see. We'll get to it in a bit, but suffice to say, there is the real seeds of what could be amazing in this scenario. I really do hope that Mohawk Studios take some of these ideas and really develop upon them in their next DLC. And though I say that the other campaigns are narrative focused, there is an increased conflict and need for battle in these campaigns compared to what I've seen in other aspects of the game. But each of the campaigns has their own set of special mechanics, all of which providing a slight nuance, a different take upon the base game, and something different to what I've seen in the rest of the old world. Let's go ahead and load these up. Now we're going to skip the prologue as this really does play itself, and it kind of just does more in setting the scene than it really does introducing gameplay or mechanics to you. It's worth playing through, but it will not take you long, and I'll even note that in the messaging it does say this short scenario serves as a prologue for the campaign, letting you recreate the Battle of Marathon, which marked a turning point in the conflict. Basically, it's just something to give you the backstory, which I'd be kind of intrigued if you didn't know, as chances are if you're playing Old World, you are a history buff or at least a history fan. But it serves its purpose in setting you up and showing you the units you'll be using. But for us, let's start on Land and Sea, a series of different set-piece battles showcasing the strengths of the Greek units and doing an amazing job at tutorializing the higher levels of combat in the game and the complexity you can actually begin to gain by developing your units through their research and upgrades and promotions to be kind of insanely good. Now we'll just bring up our show options. We're playing as the nation of Greece, of course we can't change this. We can change the strength of tribes, though there were no tribes in this, which was kind of intriguing. However, most of this I imagine is simply left over from the sandbox nature of the game, with in reality the only options you're going to care about are going to be changing the AI advantage, aka making the game more difficult for yourself. Something that you're honestly not going to have to do for a little bit, as it will no doubt take you a little bit just to figure out the nuances, though once you have, this does become a fairly easy campaign, and annoyingly, it gets easier as it goes on. It was something I noticed after I'd completed it, looking back. The initial combat, playing as Leonidas and commanding the 300, is by and far the most important part. If you can get through that surviving for a decent amount of time and taking out a fair few units, you are going to win the next engagement. It's just a matter of time, you are going to win this campaign. So upping the AI's advantage may well be the only way to get some replayability out of this, as, after all, this is purely linking set-piece battles. But don't let that fool you, it's still a lot of fun to do, and I feel like is the beginnings of something that could be so good for the series. Honestly, the DLC has me thinking more for the future than it does about it, as it feels like a lot of new ideas and areas were explored within it. So let's go ahead and start off one of the key combats in the game, following the Battle of Thermopylae. So heading into the battlefield, we have the 300. An explanation of what's going on in terms of our history. Unfortunately, a little bit of the text cut off there. That's a tad annoying that we can't scroll down. We're moving our camera in the background up and down instead. I didn't notice that before. There you go. And we can hit They Shall Not Pass, bringing us straight into the combat, or we can go for a second option to show the rules for the battle. So let's just bring up, during this battle, Greece has to defend against the Persian assault on the pass of Thermopylae. You are in control of King Leonidas the Great and a small force. They are not joking, it is tiny. You cannot defeat the invaders. Persia will reinforce if necessary until your defenses fall. No matter what happens, you will fail this battle. That said, the longer you manage to defend, the better your starting situation will be in the next stage. You can get training for each kill, which will also help in the next stage, and Leonidas is a powerful general. If the unit he commands dies, Leonidas will automatically assume command of another nearby unit. A very good thing to note, as it essentially means you can get all the bonuses from using King Leonidas before chucking him over to the next unit. Ooh, wow, cannot die with greater than 1 HP from King Leonidas, 50% if flanking, and if the same unit's adjacent, we do 20% damage. So definitely an extremely good general and a bonus we can just keep moving around and helping us out. And another thing to note that you won't actually find out till later in the game, these hoplite fight best in formation, getting a plus 20% defense if there's a same unit in the adjacent hex. Now with that said, we're going to aim to fall back in order to hold the enemy at bay. You can't actually do it on your first turn because we don't have any orders yet. You can see here that, yeah, the Persian force is fairly large. And even if by some miracle we make it through that, they are going to have more of them. Each of these scenarios will give you different options and also lay out a fair few interesting goals for each campaign. It's definitely been the highlight of the game so far, going through and trying to learn them all. This being our heavily battle-focused scenario, it really highlights exactly how combat works in Old World. Not only providing the great opportunity to learn the game and how it works in a nice, relatively controlled environment, at least it will be the same each time you start up, but by putting you in such dire straits, you're forced to not only learn about taking the best advantage of the units, but also how to min-max the gains from the environment, how to rank up your soldiers properly and make them fulfill a specific role. By setting you up in a guaranteed fail state, but making it clear the better you do, the better it will be for the next round, you start learning about how to control the environment more, how to maneuver the AI, as well as outflank foes should you need it. Alongside, by making Leonidas continually move between the different units should he be fell, we're able to see firsthand just how important generals are and how, quite frankly, ridiculously overpowered they can be. And how a small thing like going up 1 rank can drastically change the effectiveness of a unit, and when combined with environmental additions such as using the shrubbery and getting an additional 25% defense against range, can very quickly tip the odds in your favor. It essentially acts as a crash course in min-maxing, something that prior to playing it I didn't even realize I needed. Though I will state point blank that the sheer quantity of archers has led me to utterly detest them, and the fact that being a battle-focused campaign, and the fact that every time a unit falls the game freezes up, does hamper the enjoyment a little bit, particularly if you're getting multiple hits off within a single turn. As I said, this kind of feels like it's the ultimate tutorial, even compared to the actual tutorial in the game. It just does a lot better at explaining how things work and keeping it crystal clear how you can gain the advantage over your foe. The piercing mechanics and fortification and using shrubbery, using the land against the enemy. Something I hadn't really had to do when it came to the base game, but coming into this, you need every advantage you can get in order to face a hugely superior foe. I'd love to see this again in a more expansive manner, some linked in separate set piece battles, even going into a campaign with them, or vice versa. It's just a really nice example of a team thinking outside of the box. It really does feel like Mohawk Studios when they came to Heroes of the Aegean. What can we do that players haven't seen before? And granted, yes, you've seen set piece battles and linked campaigns in plenty of other games, but not in Old World. It's honestly pretty darn refreshing, and just is a nice breakup of the narrative campaigns we've been playing beforehand. I really did want to highlight this battle as it's so unique, and I would love to see more of it and really have Mohawk Studios start exploring what they can do in terms of Old World being a turn-based wargame system. Bringing it into the Heroes of the Aegean, I think, has paved the path and opened the way for them to really just do a lot more in the future, and I can't wait to see what comes out of it. And you will notice as we're playing, there are a few slight performance issues. Now, it's not been enough to really detract from the game, but it is certainly noticeable, and something that's quite odd to see in a turn-based strategy game, especially as, if we zoom in, we can see straight away a large bit of lag there, but the detail on the models and the terrain is not ridiculous. It's pretty darn good, it definitely looks nice, and there is some good little motion in these characters, but it's not to the extent that I would be expecting any major drop in performance such as then. Seeing as this is turn-based strategy, you're probably going to be zoomed out for a fair bit of it, so there's not too much to worry about. Now, since this is a guaranteed loss, we're going to go ahead and skip to the next section, as well as check out some of the other scenarios available. So we're going to leave this here, as I really don't want to spoil too much, at least in regards to on land and sea, as there isn't much variability in replayability other than simply trying to improve the amount of turns you took or increase the amount of Persians you slay. There's a fair amount of efficiency challenging in this. It does feel like there's a tiny bit of RNG involved in as how the AI moves, but also in what is available to you in terms of your upgrades, as it will be in the other campaigns that you'll find changes in the campaign, how your narrative affects the game, choosing different options. That's really where replayability will come in. But On Land and Sea is an excellent experimental piece, just allowing for the devs to get a bit more creative and try something new. And the reason I think I like this so much is it's so different to the rest of the game. Whereas everything else is based around developing your nation, expanding, and engaging in those narrative aspects of the character interactions, this is just straight up warfare. It does it extremely well, and it shows off exactly what you can do even with a small amount of units, able to hold off a foe and put down a darn fair few of them. I think the fact that it is so different is what makes it so annoying, that there are so many issues coming through. At the end of that, we finally fell. Now, it does say you failed the goal, but this is a predestined one. So eventually we're going to move over here, and this is kind of where the performance issues really come in. So whenever you move between the different sections, you're still on the same map. There's no loading screen, but the game does have to A, load the map, and B, load the units. And it is going to take its sweet time about it. For some reason, you also have this little area loaded here, but I actually can't show you it. The game is just going to go that slow. And eventually, if we come back over to the sea after seeing the captured city, we'll now come back and be able to see we have been given 3 new ships. Now, if we show you the rules for the battle once more, we have to destroy the Persian fleet, though it does give you a little bit of a hint to use Grappler and Coxswain. 2 extremely good upgrades for your ships. You can see why you're going to want to spend as long as you can and defeat as many enemies as possible, as the enemy has a whole lot of ships to send. It's a great series of interlinking battles, and I love the idea and really do hope they expand on this. It's just kind of unfortunate that we do have these performance issues creeping in, where honestly I wouldn't mind there just being a separate loading screen. I'd imagine this is more to do with how the game loads and unloads information, and it's simply a byproduct of that. But it is the difference between something coming across as well polished and well designed, and a little bit hodgepodge thrown together. A nice idea, but the execution, questionable. So having completed our battles, we move on now to more of the empire management section. We are King Philip the Warrior of Macedonia, aiming to develop the Macedonian nation and develop our empire. We're playing much in the same style as any 4X game. We have a nice border for our settlements. We can go in, start recruiting some of these units, actually quite high level units, the Hephaestus, as well as potentially one day getting the Phalangite. Archers, slingers, warriors. Well, these last two, the warriors and slingers, they are quite low level and you will struggle to get much out of them later on in the game. Unfortunately, with the way that the AI progresses, the chances are they'll be spamming us with hoplite and axemen, whereas we're stuck with swords and slings. It really can be quite annoying, as it makes defeating them substantially harder than it should be. In fact, these campaigns play quite nicely into showing off how hard this game can be, relating all these different mechanics, particularly the order system, requiring you to do things that normally you would do quite late game fairly early on, just dragging you straight into the action. There's no need to spend time developing. Instead, you can just hit straight in, start fighting away, even if our early game units aren't the best. But in shuffling along to check out one final campaign, we can see some of those new mechanics coming through. Playing as Queen Olympias, we have to appease the various families of Greece while simultaneously progressing the story of the campaign by choosing various different event options. And we can see from the scenario rules that instead of the usual family mechanics, each city's family represents political influence. Our goal to take control of all cities, with in this scenario there being no discontent, however there is influence. With the ability to run a special mission in order to take over a city should we increase our influence enough. I don't think that means this is a peaceful game designed to make everyone happy. We're still going to be fighting a heck of a lot. It's what the Heroes of the Aegean does best, and even in these sort of scenarios, it still keeps things fresh by introducing those extra mechanics and extra considerations. Now this carries on from the previous campaign where you played as King Philip. You would have gone forth and built this empire, and now it is up for your devious heir to take charge, try and maintain it. Now a lot of this campaign is going to play out moving around, taking care of rebellions, keeping people happy, and trying to increase that intrigue as much as you can, as quick as you can, to try and push for glory. Minor spoiler, we are going to need a lot of soldiers to deal with things, but here we are pushing through to see our event. Now, as I said, you are going to be able to pick from a few different options for each event that pops up, and so the replayability is really going to come down to whether or not you want to go through and try different events from this. Should we say there was no conspiracy and Pausanias acted alone, slaying King Philip? Do the Persian spies manage a daring plan? Or do we know the truth? Philip must fall. Let's go ahead and just see what the truth gives us. I'm willing to bet not a lot. But besides the wood, you do start off in an extremely good position. We have multiple settlements, we have lots of soldiers, and they are fairly well spread around. We go over to our unit managers. I can't remember where that is. You can see we have hoplite, we have phalangite, as well as, yes, a few archers. No slingers, interestingly. But we have high tier units, we even have a general set aside in one of them. So we are capable to defend ourselves, at least to begin with. We can also use some special civic projects throughout this campaign, just helping you out by centralizing the economy, or more importantly, undermining Athens, affording us some additional influence as we do. And then taking a look at our specialist tech tree, all of these will be providing some unique events to them. Antipater, once your friend and mentor Alexander, has great political ambitions and poses a threat to you. You will not remain in power if ambitions are left unchecked. Consecrated effort is needed. We will have a standoff with Antipater. The Persian menace. We could go forth and annihilate another empire, or we could just focus on dominating Athens and continuing to undermine them, and hopefully claim the game that way. As I said, the replayability really comes down to how much of the narrative you want to explore, and part of that is unlocked by going forth and taking on these different researches. So let's go ahead and set up a domination of Athens, wipe out these rebel scum, and prepare to take on an empire. But once more, I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to spoil the narrative. So to sum it up, the Heroes of the Aegean provides a nice mix-up to the old world's formula, using the game's core strength of narrative events and storytelling, while shifting focus to a series of more combat-based scenarios, with enough unique mechanics to keep them fresh. It's a fantastic showcase of potential and demonstrates a great precedent for what the future could hold. It just feels a little light on new content, and although shifting focus to more of a combat-based militaristic style, the Heroes of the Aegean doesn't seem like a great leap forward for the franchise, or really introduce anything that you would miss out on if you didn't go into the sandbox with a militaristic playstyle. If you like the base game, you'll no doubt enjoy the Heroes of the Aegean, but as to if it's value for money, well, unfortunately, you're gonna have to judge that for yourself. The campaigns are pretty darn long, and you are going to spend a long time going through them all. And as I said, there is enough new stuff in there to keep you interested as you do. And I think if you go in with a mind frame of getting more of the same but different, then it'll probably work out pretty well for you. But either way, that's been our short look at the Heroes of the Aegean. Hope you've enjoyed, and as always, peace out.